Greetings, users and programs. This is Etari Living Sacrifice, continuing 80 days around the world in 80 days, like the Jules Verne book. So we're about to start day 35, and we're leaving Chittagong's port. And let's see, the British Army had closed down Chittagong's port and set up pickets which prevented travelers from leaving the city. Luckily for us, the colonial governor had made an exception for monks. Or I can choose, but no tyrant tyrannizes all. My dyslexia wants to read it. No tranny tyrannizes all. Let's see here. Let's click this one. And this governor's weakness was for the religious class, so he had allowed a caravan of monks to proceed on the way to the Burmese royal capital of Yadabnaban for the fifth Buddhist Synod. A sensible decision, an admirably self-serving decision. His reasons were his own, but we were happy to take advantage of them. Uncharacteristically, it was my master rather than I who had convinced the monks to grant us passage with them. I confess myself surprised by the magnificence of their transport. Perhaps I can have a day off, ? A small fleet of carriages drawn by pairs of gilded leogriffs, chinks, which belched steam from their jaws. I glanced at my master as we settled into our seats. We will travel in style. Are you sure they are monks? I remarked. A dry laugh interrupted whatever response Monsieur Fogg was about to make as a Burmese monk of middle years climbed in. The carriages were sent by the King of Burma. They do not belong to us, he explained. We began to jolt our way out of the city. We own no material goods. A very generous king. Then how do you eat and clothe yourself? A very generous king, I remarked, being rather suspicious of kings in general and kingly generosity in particular. He is, the monk agreed affably, and then settled into meditative silence. And so, with such conversation, we left the burning town of Chittagong behind us. Let's do as much as we can to get him back up to health. The monks in our carriage began to chant in Sanskrit as the sun moved across the sky. I half drowsed to the calming rhythm of their voices. Listened captivated by the sound, tried to stopper my ears with socks. And only fell quiet when our carriage drew to a halt in the royal city of Yadanaban, overlooked by the hill of Mandalay. (6:00 p.m.) Let's go ahead and pass the night. Yadanaban was thronged with Buddhist monks and believers who had flooded the city to attend the 5th Buddhist Synod. They meditated, conversed, and drank endless cups of tea in the many free travelers' shelter zayats of the royal capital. I went looking for transportation. I went looking for something to eat. Locating a rack of chintz for hire outside of one of the zayats. Where do you head? That was enough for me. I asked, and the driver shrugged. South or north? Where to? Pangsha, Rangoon, he shrugged. Where do you want to go? London. London. Those will do for now. Let me say London. That's quite far. Indeed so. I replied, and I turned to leave. Then the smell of cooking distracted me. I approached, and fell into conversation with one of the cooks in a nearby zayat, who was stirring a vast pot of glass noodles and chicken broth flavored with lime leaves and coconut. Aren't Buddhists vegetarians? How long have you been a cook? I inquired, watching her add sliced-up roast pork to her cooking pot. What? She looked at me blankly. We are followers of the Theravada school. The monks are only forbidden to consume the flesh of the human. Elephant, horse, dog, cat, lion, tiger, bear, leopard, and slug. Do slugs even have flesh? I asked weakly. Are you questioning the Buddha? She sighed heavily. Now, are you just going to stand there, or are you going to help me serve this meal? Of course, madam. We fed perhaps 50 monks and travelers over the next hour. It was hard labor, but in the end of it, I felt a true spirit of camaraderie. The cooks gave me 2 bowls of flavorsome noodle broth as reward, and I took them home to my master. A nourishing meal was not something to be turned down on our travels. And go south. Embark. If you were wondering what a chink looks like, I'm assuming that dog, lion shaped Chinese looking thing is a chink. Driver, to take us to Rangoon. The woman drove in silence, perhaps objecting to her nationality, determined to maintain a professional relationship. Clearly, she had never encountered a passenger quite like Monsieur Fogg before. Converse? Why, my dear Passepartout? They say that Rangoon has a fierce protector. There are many options, but we will choose. The one we choose will decide a route across the Americas. For instance, have you discovered anything in the Times concerning Yada? And for instance, you can pick up statues of the Buddha in Yada that will sell for a fortune in Yokohama. We arrived without incident. As the sun was setting, relation with Fogg has strengthened slightly. The magnetic compass could earn us well here. I was really hoping to go down here and then over here to Hong Kong. Singapore. Let us go to bed. Rangoon still bore the marks of its capture. I don't know why I put an I in there. Of its capture at the hands of the British in the last Anglo-Burmese War. But in the following decade, King Pagan had transformed, so I intended to make as much as I could of my French accent. While I was here, but even such, of course, could not save me. I had taken mere 2 steps from the veranda of our lodgings when an enormous shadow darkened the street. There was a grinding shriek and a hot breath, and then I was seized in a great iron claw. I tried to wriggle away. I went limp. A claw. In all my travels, I had not expected such treatment. The ground fell away in a dizzying rush. The automaton was not flying precisely, but rather leaping with a powerful bunching of hydraulics and gears. With 3 powerful jumps, the creature scaled a nearby temple and deposited me at the very top of the pagoda. I closed my eyes and clung. I dared to look at my captor. I am not British, I insisted with eyes shut. Only to find myself similarly scrutinized by a pair of jeweled-faceted predator's eyes. The automaton was an enormous, gilded iron lion with a heartbreakingly human porcelain face and torso. Its mane was made of strands of uncut rubies. Worse still, it could speak. I am Minutia, it said in grating rumble, and you are in my city, Jean Passepartout. You know my name? I demanded, my distaste for my Christian name overriding my fear. I know every creature that comes here. I am the protector of the city. I know the whys and hows of every creature that passes through my domain. But your purpose is a mystery. We are simply passing through. We are going around the world. You do not care for mysteries? I declared, but with far less than my usual gusto, aware as I was of the long drop which awaited me if I chose my words without care. The world is a dangerous place, Minutia said, grinding its iron teeth in a horrible smile, and you Europeans only make it more so, wherever you go. Do you intend to eat me? You are the watchdog of the king, I suggested, like the chink who sits in front of a temple. Minutia shook his blank human face from side to side in a clatter of rubies. And I am an imperial advisor to King Bagan, and no simple collection of gears and levers. I could scarcely believe Minutia's calm philosophical discourse, but I insisted, who is your master? Who made you? I am an imperial advisor, Minutia emphasized. I have no master but myself, and possibly Buddha. You are free? I am. More free than my oil-blooded, steam-driven, iron-bodied brethren, the automaton allowed, and so I am in position to uplift them. Enjoy my city, John Passepartout, but when you leave, you will go to Pang Saw Pass. But there is no route that way. And do what? You will know. It seized me in its warm paw once more and leapt to the street in one heart-stopping bound. By the time I had finished shaking, Manusha was gone, his last ambiguous words echoing in my head. I wondered how much of the kingdom of Burma's recent change of fortune could be ascribed to the protector of Rangoon. I wondered whether the people of Burma would one day proclaim themselves subjects of an automaton king. I tried to forget what I had seen as quickly as possible. I wondered if he would truly be worse than a monarch of flesh and blood. I wondered many other things, best left unvoiced. What? Okay, well, I guess I'm gonna go. Might as well go all the way up north then. That's a Garuda. The next morning, we stepped onto the street to find a gigantic bronze and steel bird waiting for us. It bowed its head and held out a claw. This was the transport Manusha had hinted at. I gulped for fear, but Monsieur Fogg was not even slightly concerned. He leapt aboard, consulted his pocket watch, and smiled as we lifted into the sky. That was very fast. The flight was in fact glorious. We swept over mountains. I clung on tightly as we banked and wheeled. Deep ravines, tiny villages, and deep jungle. It was the wildest, deepest country I had yet seen, and we soared above it, as though it were a painting and we were its audience. Even Monsieur Fogg was enjoying himself. The speed had brought a touch of color to his otherwise meticulously pale cheek. Passepartout, he declared, with true passion. However you have arranged this, I am most impressed. A mighty compliment indeed. I nodded my head a fraction. My pleasure, I called back, though the familiarity made my master's good humor shrink, I think. We landed in Pangsal Pass under cover of darkness. The bird let us down gently, dropped our cases, and then wheeled away dramatically into the sky. Excellent progress, Monsieur Fogg remarked. But I cannot help remember Monsieur's words and feel certain there was a price yet to be paid. We'll have to sleep and explore in the morning. There were no hotels in Pangsal Pass, but we were put up for the night in a local man's thatched roof dwelling. Explore. There was a mood of grim celebration when we arrived at Pangsal Pass. A man by the name of Captain Chalmers had captured Surya, a notorious Indian revolutionary responsible for some of the recent disturbances in Chittagong. Would you like to come with me to interrogate the man? Captain Chalmers asked genially. I cannot trust the natives to guard my back. His smile was deceptive. I smiled acidly in return. It is not in my area of expertise. On the seat of my own gentleman, I felt compelled. An automaton was at my back, so to speak, so as I realized with a sinking heart that this was Manusha's task for me. I was supposed to rescue this helpless Indian rebel. I made my way towards the prison hut with a heavy heart. The prison hut was a small, rancid-smelling place that had been used more than once. Monsieur Fogg, standing at the door with me, raised an eyebrow. Perhaps they will listen to me, he suggested. Good idea. I said, Monsieur Fogg stepped quickly forward and knocked on the door. I cannot imagine what the reaction inside was like to this most polite of interruptions, but I took the opportunity to slip around the back of the hut. There was a pile of dry firewood stacked against one wall, underneath the window. I peered inside. A fire would make an excellent distraction. I looked around for a missile, then rapidly wished I had not. Surya was slumped in the middle of the floor, arms and legs tied around a post. Chalmers was just going towards the door to open it. Fire would make an excellent distraction, I thought. And there had been lit candles back in the barrack huts, but I had no decent means at hand to start one. I looked around for a missile. Conjecturing that if I could smash the window and make the captain believe they were under attack, perhaps I could lure him away from his prisoner. In the stores there had been some grenades. I found a rock and lobbed it through the window. Chalmers appeared a moment later, Monsieur Fogg in tow. Seems you two are troublemakers, he declared. We demand you let that man go. I was practicing my bowling. I began a long explanation. Chalmers laughed with some bitterness. I admire your courage, he remarked, but this is not a country for amateurs. We were politely restrained. There was nothing more we could do. 6 hours later, they hanged Surya from a makeshift scaffold in the town square. His teeth were broken, and his nails had been pulled out. He was unconscious when he swung. Captain Chalmers watched the whole thing without flinching, and then vomited spectacularly over his shoes. It was a dark time. I wanted to leave Pangsu Pass. I wanted to stab the man in sleep. I wanted to take back our decision to come this way. Never return. I wanted to raze it to the ground. I wanted to take back our decision to come this way. Ah, my friends, we cannot have everything we want in this dark life. Chalmers gave us permission to leave. We scrambled to look for departures. I wonder what would have happened if I'd actually saved him. Is it possible to save him? Arrive Sunday. That's the fastest way. That's the only way, huh? It says tomorrow at 8 a.m. I wonder if I just, when I wanted to go to Singapore, if I'd have just missed this, whatever this thing in the middle, because it doesn't move. He boarded a Garuda, an eagle-like flying automaton the size of a small airship, bounded for Canton. Captain Chalmers came to wave us off, but I could not look him in the eyes. Our luggage was suspended from the creature's claws. We ourselves were strapped upon its broad back, exposed to the buffeting of the wind with each beat of its jointed metal wings. Then it began to beat its wings, and we rose up into the air. Great day for Britain as notorious Indian rebel hangs. I don't know why I'm having trouble reading all of a sudden. Thankfully, there were sleeping berths inside the Garuda's hull, and other conveniences beside, but we all had to take turns upon the beds and sleep in shifts. I might have enjoyed it, but I could not shake the sounds of the dying man and Pangsu Pass from my ears. They stuck as though they had sunk into the very bones of my skull. Halfway through the night I heard the sound of an alarm. Something was wrong with the ship. I dashed to a porthole to see what was occurring. The creature's great claws were singing free. It seemed that Garuda had, without instructions from its pilot, released all the luggage from its grip. The crew were quite puzzled. I knew exactly the cause, but could not tell anyone. A petty revenge for the death of a man, but a revenge nonetheless. Aw, man. We lost everything. Lost everything. I awoke to one of the crew's grinning faces peering in at me through a porthole. I merely smiled back blankly, not perceiving that said crewman must be suspended outside the Garuda to be so rudely looking in upon me. I rushed up on deck once I had taken my sleep-muddled senses into hand. The operation of the craft on which we rode did not interest me. An inverted canopy of pale blue silk under the Garuda. What are y'all doing? I do believe in my plate. I placed my hands on my hips in irritation. Our job, said the nearest crew member, with a crack-toothed grin. Empress Sixi doesn't like airships and the like. The Chinese are likely to try to shoot us down if they spot us. Sky-colored camouflage, Monsieur Fogg remarked, coming up on deck beside me, an ingenious solution. They must notice when we land at Canton, I remarked sensibly. Or are you saying to merely continue this charade? See, that's depends on what part of the world you're from, charade or charade. I'm assuming charade since he's French. And pretend to be a very low-hanging cloud. Perhaps the Empress doesn't like us, but she does like taxing trade, and we pay tax. The girl tossed her head and flashed another grin. That's why she puts up with you foreign devils, and why she winks at the airships as long as we put some effort in. You have a very political mind for an airwoman. To Empress Sixi, you are a foreign devil, too. I noted. My pa taught me to read English for his sins. She barked a laugh. The name's Lynn Carrington. And while my pa was European and by all accounts a devil besides, Ma's a nice village girl from Yunnan. She stuck her hand out, and I shook it, and I pressed a kiss to it. With grave formality, which made her laugh and then punched me on the arm as though I had made a great jest. Carrington, as she insisted I call her, tried to convince me to come out on the wings with her. It's a thrill like no other, she assured me, the only way to fly. I do not need further thrills. Who am I to deny such an invitation? I said, stepping up beside her. Carrington's face lit up at my words, and quick as a flash she roped us together and tied one end to a sturdy metal pole, which seemed placed for the purpose of securing errant wing walkers. I leapt onto the first wing. I waited for her to mount the wing and followed. I'm going to go first, feeling suddenly competitive. She was not far behind and ran the length of the wing nimbly, stretching the rope taut between us. I focused on my feet. I looked at the vista below us. Far, far below us, I felt a prickle of sweat as I began walking out onto the wing. I could feel the reverberations of the engine through the metal, and the wind whipped into my eyes. What had possessed me to agree to such a rash action? Carrington laughed. Of course, I had done it. To impress a girl, because I had been dared to. Apparently, I am doomed never to learn my lesson when it comes to my pride. Still, I cannot pretend I regretted a moment of it. Carrington and I sat together on the joint of the Garuda's wing, returned inside, hot, flustered by the wind. As it banked and descended to its destination, absolutely nothing between our feet and the enlarging vista of Canton. After a while, I found I was crying. Passepartout, she asked, what is the matter? I'm afraid of heights, I lied. I saw some terrible things in Pangsaw Pass. I told her, I think they have not left me. Here she gestured to me, to lay my head on her shoulder. You are well above the world, and I will sing to you. And she did, in lilting Mandarin, teaching me gently in between verses. I was almost sorry to land. Oh, I have to explore. I should have talked to them instead of dealing with him. Canton's 13 factories had once been the only Chinese port which traded with foreigners. The city had grown opium-rich and impossibly lush until the Second Opium War and the subsequent opening of other treaty ports to foreign trade. Canton was a rotting corpse. Canton was still lovely, but it was the faded beauty of decline, like a once great manse falling into disrepair. Let's look up what manse means. M-A-N-S-E. The house occupied by a minister of a Presbyterian church. Oh, kind of like mansion. Ew. We were lodged in the barbarian settlements, as the locals termed them, on the sandbank island of Shamian, bordered by the Pearl River and connected to the mainland by 2 bridges. I spoke with the French Vietnamese troops guarding the French bridge, uniformed Sikhs guarding the British bridge, who chattered to each other in a mix of Vietnamese, Cantonese, and French. It does me good to hear my mother tongue, I announced with a smile. Does it? They seemed singularly unimpressed by my appeal to them as countrymen. Then again, Frenchmen were probably 10 a penny in Canton. I looked across the canal to the mainland. Why is the bridge guarded? So there is no trouble, one of them replied promptly. It seemed an odd state of affairs that traders and merchantmen would need an island apart from the locals and imported guards beside. It was a stark reminder that foreign trade in China was performed at the tip of a sword. It was foolish for the Chinese to resist the future, for us to push in where so unwelcome. The answer is both. I'm going to say for China to resist the future. Steam trains and telegraph lines and airships were pulling us all ever closer. China could not hope to escape the embrace of modernity. The fading, bristling city of Canton was but a sign of the times. Let's explore. I walked the streets while discovering the possibilities for how we might make progress. Steam bicycle. Oh, that was land the whole time. Now I was so confused. Oh my gosh, I was so confused. Even though it was only 80 miles from Canton to Hong Kong, the passage, we were told, would still take all day. We boarded a wobbly steam bicycle, driven by a boy of tiny, wiry proportions who cheered and yelled as he kicked the bicycle into the highest gear. Converse. Bicycle ride was fast and rough, bouncing around an uncomfortable saddle, listening to our driver's endless chatter as the scenery rolled blankly past. We arrived a few hours later into the port of Hong Kong, and the boy stuck out his hand for a tip. I gave him 20 pounds and sent him on his way, and he nodded with thanks. Then he wagged his finger and offered a single phrase of advice. No opium, he said. No, no, no. I suppose he was repeating his parents' words. I thanked him for his guidance, and he giggled, then jumped on his bike and rocketed away. We'll have to explore. Was looking over a bolt of bright red Chinese silk when a man accosted me. This man had a mustache so fine, so luxuriant, so well tended, that I briefly lost the power of speech. Your mustache bewilders me, sir. I watched, mesmerized, as it quivered with every word of introduction. It seemed his name was Fix. He offered me a drink, and given that I had a few hours to spare, I could not in good conscience refuse. He led me into a dingy basement where a sour-faced Chinese woman presided over several tables and a few couches with men and women, mostly Europeans, in various states of lolling intoxication. This is an opium den, I exclaimed uneasily. The gin is good, he told me, and ordered us a bottle to prove his claim. It was thin and sharp, but not wholly distasteful. We chatted amiably for a time, though I noted he kept my glass full, and not his own. Listen, he said abruptly. I'm a police detective sent from the London office. You a detective? I could not hide my incredulity, but he presented me with his commission, which seemed in all respects genuine and correct. You have been duped, he resumed. Mr. Fogg's wager is a pretext. Last September, a robbery of £55,000 was committed at the Bank of England by a person whose description answers exactly to that of Mr. Phileas Fogg. What nonsense, I cried, striking the table with my fist. He is what? £55,000, did you say? My master is the most honorable of men. You know scarcely anything of your master, Fix ground on. You went into his service the day he departed on this so-called wager, carrying little but a large quantity of banknotes. He is an honest man. He is too gallant to be a thief. I protested. Fix strokes his mustache. Thieves are frequently gallant, he assured me. Charismatic, even. You cannot accuse Monsieur Fogg of charisma, I replied. Fix shrugged. I have not met him. I only know that Scotland Yard have sent me out here to capture this Fogg. The detective hissed a breath which fluttered the tips of his oiled mustache. I can arrest you as his accomplice. I have done nothing wrong. I cannot betray him. I replied with a shudder. Even if what you say is true, I am in his service. My loyalty cannot be bought. I come from a village where you don't eat that kind of bread, monsieur. Fix pressed the pipe into my hand, and I unthinkingly lifted it to my mouth, before dashing it away in horror. This is an opium pipe, I accused, standing up so abruptly my chair tipped over. How dare you, sir? Fix chuckled hollowly. I dare because I must at all costs separate you and your master, as you call him. Then you will fail. You will regret it. Having delivered my dramatic promise, I stalked out of the opium den without a backward glance. The fresh air cleared my senses a little, and I returned with shaky steps to Monsieur Fogg, despite the gin sloshing its way through my body. I felt as sober as a judge and twice as grim. Come on. Parts tomorrow at 9 a.m. I was loath to leave Monsieur Fogg for any length of time, having so narrowly escaped the clutches of that blackguard Fix. We explored the city from the comfort of a mechanical sedan chair, but my terrible experience dimmed the colors and tarnished the beauty of the streets. I found myself anxious to leave. Jade Tiger. The Jade Tiger was an old, Mudge-class Persian airship, renovated with Chinese colors and fittings. It was painted all over with Manchu luck symbols. It had been repaired and patched up several times over. Swastika stylized bats and coins. We climbed aboard ready for the journey east. Dominoes. Captain Sue wore a traditional Manchu pau and blue cotton bone hairpins in her fan-shaped hair and a jade thumb ring. I extended my hand for her to shake. I bowed low in courtly greeting. She looked at me quizzically and then asked a series of questions in Cantonese Chinese. I did not know enough of the language to identify a particular variant. An English-speaking crew member was summoned. Her tool belt hung with rope, bolt cutters, and climbing equipment. The captain says she expected you to speak Cantonese, she translated, because you were in Hong Kong. I speak several languages. I was only briefly in Hong Kong, I sighed. I did not have much time to practice my languages. The crew member rattled her bolt cutters at me. The captain speaks Cantonese, Mandarin, 3 dialects of Manchu, Russian, and Arabic. Are any of these known to you? I speak a little Mandarin, I offered weakly, though only a very little. The captain, for all her delicacy, arranged hair and grace, looked thoroughly exasperated and stalked off in a huff. The crew member chuckled and stuck out her hand at me. Song Zhu Ying. Looks like I'll be looking after you and your master on this trip. Madame Song? Demoiselle Song? I ventured. Song Xingyu shuddered. Song Ziying's fine. I try not to mangle it too much, Passepartout. Her pronunciation was, of course, flawless. Merde, mercy. Monsieur Fogg took exception to the moth-eaten red silk drapings which adorned our cabin and asked me to take them down for the duration of the voyage. Is it their condition you cannot bear? Is it the color that distresses you? Does it matter, he replied with perfect equanimity. Only if a man has a right to know why he does things. I suppose it does not in the end. Only, they are quite beautiful, if a little worn. I suppose it does not in the end, I replied, attempting to consider the matter from my master's ever-logical perspective. Song Zhu Ying looked terribly surprised when she came to fetch us for dinner and saw the bare-walled room. The master is a plain fellow. My master has very particular tastes. How nice for him to have the luxury of taste was her only remark, but I felt it sting keenly. We dined in the captain's quarters, accompanied by Song Zhu Ying. A Siberian tiger skin rug sprawled across the floor. The captain's Shelves groaned under the weight of so many books. And I counted 6 composite recurved bows hung on the walls, archery and Russian novels. What an unexpected combination. Song Zuying leaned in closer. The captain loves archery almost as much as she loves the jade tiger. Where did she learn it? How did she become a captain? Therein lies the tale, the crew member smiled with relish. The captain's father was too old and weak to join the army. And so Captain Sue put on the clothing of a boy and rode out to take his place. How daring of her, I gasped. It was a grave risk, but she served for 12 years and gained so much honor that when she was discovered, the generals gifted her with an airship and forgave her deception. Is that not the plot of a famous Chinese folk tale? It is quite an implausible tale. How marvelous. The story of Mulan? Song Zuying's eyes widened. You know the story, she said flatly, and then shrugged. You are not so ignorant as you seem. A most stimulating dinner at the captain's table, all told. We tethered at Yokohama in the early afternoon. My eye passed lightly over the sloped-roofed buildings, carriages, and bare cherry trees. I made particular effort to thank let's thank her for an entertaining journey, for she had been an excellent and fanciful translator. Think nothing of it, she advised, shaking my hand with her calloused one. Good luck. Ready, Passepartout? My master called. Of course, monsieur. I sighed tiredly. I replied eagerly, and followed him onto Japanese soil. Alright, we're in Japan. The .45 caliber rifle would earn us well here. Where are we? Are we not here? Ah. Plastic wallet. There's no chance of a better. Could have sworn I said Yokohama. Pyongyang, huh? Okay. I don't need the money, so I'm going to keep it. It was hard to believe that Yokohama had only relatively recently opened to foreigners. There was an entire foreigners district not far from the waterfront, where it was as common to hear Chinese or Russian as Japanese. There were several varieties of English. There was a melding of cultures to choose from as well, though Monsieur Fogg would have barely deigned to include the nasal tongue of the American merchants. I noticed the Japanese man watching the scene with a look of intense concentration and scribbling in a notebook. I leaned in for a look. He was drawing a stylized picture of the foreign quarters with quick pen strokes, which stopped abruptly as my shadow fell over the drawing. He looked up, clearly irritated. Do you mind, he said, his accent an unholy mix of Dutch, French, and English. I'm making a drawing for a woodcut. Why does that American appear drunk? The skirts aren't that voluminous. He was clearly a temperamental sort. So I left him to his work with a polite smile. I do not think he liked foreigners from his drawing of them. Alright. 4,000. San Francisco, 14 days. Tomorrow at 3. Pass the night here. As night fell, I attended to Monsieur Fogg. Alright. Let us depart to San Francisco. Safety harness. Alright. This is a long journey. Let's see. The Water Lily was a sleek iron-hulled ship-to-submarine prototype, captained by a severe American by the name of Wicker, who wore a top hat and crewed by a mix of Americans, Chinese, and Japanese, all who spoke a kind of salty, curse-studded sailor's English. In addition to the usual complement, the Water Lily carried an entire corps of brass-goggled engineers and a brace of submariners on standby, should the captain call the order to submerge. The rumor was she had been a slave ship, was a Confederate vessel. Sold off to private concern in the latter, more desperate stages of the Civil War. But I saw no trace of a dark past abroad. The crew seemed a happy family and welcomed us into their iron-hulled bosom. Our cabin, while hardly spacious, was adequate to our needs. One of the midshipmen came by to show us how to use the pressure seals in case of submersion, but in all other aspects, I resigned myself to, a peaceful steamship ocean crossing. I was not to be so lucky. That is ominous. So ominous. Greetings, Captain. Passepartout, what do you want? Begins conversation. Americans are still recovering from the Civil War, I hear. Let's see here. San Francisco to... I don't even know where that is. Sounds unlikely. San Francisco to Salt Lake City. Looks like we're going to go through America. That was not the plan. Although I did lose my American garb, the salty air blew cool and sharp against my face as I opened the door onto the top deck. It was painfully early. The only passenger awake were a group of Chinese laborers hunched miserably near the stern. I paid them no attention. One of their number was vomiting copiously into a bucket. Offered him my own secret remedy, which I had brewed up for just such an occasion. He swallowed it down with a certain dubious desperation, but immediately improved in both complexion and temperament. He thanked me most profusely. ZZ, I waved away his thanks. I said, I don't know if that's Zai Zai or ZZ, Zai Zai. I said, using one of the few Mandarin expressions I had picked up in my travels. They laughed uproariously at my pronunciation, but seemed altogether pleased by my attempts to render thanks in their tongue. So far, not much happening. Shoot, I didn't pick it fast enough. I accompanied Monsieur Fogg to a game of whist with a family of American missionaries who were traveling back to San Francisco for a family wedding. My master began strongly, but Mademoiselle Loretta, the eldest girl, had a sharp eye and won several hands in a row. A new round was dealt. I noticed Mademoiselle Loretta slip a card into her sleeve, smile triumphantly at my master. I blinked twice in pure astonishment and glanced up at her face, which was utterly calm, betraying nothing of the action of her nimble fingers. The minister's daughter was a cheat, and a skilled one at that. I filed away the knowledge for an opportune moment, catching her eye to convey that I had noticed her little sleight of hand. She blushed with all the manufactured prettiness of an accomplished actress, then raised one eyebrow in silent challenge. Our journey continued on. Man. Greetings, Mademoiselle. Passepartout, why hello. Let's see here. San Francisco, Burlington, Cheyenne. Let's see. Cheyenne, Albuquerque, Las Vegas, Domino's. Let's see here. Look at from Cheyenne to Atlanta, Washington State or Washington. Mexican holiday makers, Acapulco. I spent today in the company of the Water Lily's submariners. They were all hardy men and women who preferred the dim, enclosed spaces of the hold to the top deck. Too much sky, one of them said, squinting suspiciously. Her crewmates nodded. All that fresh air. They shuddered collectively and suggested a bracing race to the boiler room. I impressed him. I tried to keep up. I offered an alternative. Having no great desire to sprint through the ill-lit, echoing ship's corridors. Their commander, a short Japanese-American woman, gave me a look of scorn. What do you suggest? I demanded a drinking contest, a test of acrobatic skill. A drinking contest. A grin of vicious, unqualified glee spread across Commander Davis's face. I began to think my suggestion a poor one. 3 flasks of sake later, I tried to back out, so I suggested switching to an acrobatic contest. Nope, we're sticking with the drinking contest. I was convinced of my grave error. Commander Davis is apparently legendary for her ability to hold her drink, whereas I ended the evening in an unexpected embrace with the starboard bulkhead. Not perhaps one of my more successful adventures. Wish I could speak with a French accent. I was climbing the rigging, as exercise of course, and not at all for the purpose of spying on the crew to appease my own rapacious curiosity, when I heard 2 of the crewmen arguing in a pidgin mix of English and Japanese. I peeped upwards, I closed my eyes and listened to their voices. Only a few words were audible over the howling of the wind. Shrine, heathen worship, for a sudden scream rent the air. One of the sailors was falling from the platform's edge. I was unable to look away as he fell. His body lay still and crumpled on the deck, but I heard his scream in my head for days after. I looked up and managed to catch sight of the fallen sailor's companion, his face still and pallid. Was that guilt in his eyes or merely shock? He slipped away before the captain arrived, and I followed him. He retired to the crew quarters, and I began to hear the sound of desperate, muttered prayers. I was not specifically invited. Oh, the Water Lily's crew held a funeral for the dead sailor. I was not specifically invited, but was curious about the incident. The funeral was an excellent opportunity to learn more about the crew. Captain Wicker led the Christian service with customary grimness. I was surprised by the absence of the sailor's companion, who had been arguing with him just before his fall. Yet he was not the only one missing from the funeral. Oddly, only half the crew had come to pay their respects. I went in search of the rest, asked my neighbor, supposed the death at sea was commonplace. About this breach of custom, and she narrowed her eyes. Joseph was a convert, she told me defiantly. The captain taught him to read the Bible himself. The rest of the crew are heathens. They stay away from our godly ceremonies. I have no idea how that made him courageous. Reverend, Passepartout, good day to ya. Let's see here. The car. No idea, but now the loss of slave trade has hit Senegal hard. Now tell me, would you believe it? I introduced my daughter to the cards that occupy her mind. Storm. Too exhausted to write a proper entry. Suffice to say, we are still afloat. We settled down for the night. I was struck by an unrelated thought. Monsieur Fogg, the dateline. I have altered our watch already, Monsieur Fogg replied calmly. Did you think I might forget? My master was, of course, correct. With an eye such as his, it was unthinkable that he might miss such a detail. We had reached the point directly opposite Greenwich. Imagine what had transpired had we forgotten. A less precise man than Monsieur Fogg might have finished on the 80th day and yet believed himself to have lost. Oh, he gained a day. I think. Keep his health above 80. Yesterday's storm hit us with a little warning. One moment I was preparing shaving water, mending one of my shirts, adding a ribbon trim to exactly the right temperature. The next we were being tossed from one end of the cabin to the other. We were only lucky that the bed was securely nailed to the floor. The ship shuddered and moaned, rayed and clattered against our iron hull as the seas flickered with lightning. The storm lasted nearly 6 hours and blew us far off course. The captain spent most of the day peering at his charts, trying to locate our position. There is no land anywhere upon the horizon. Oh, we're going to be going to Hawaii, huh? The captain announced the change in destination. The Water Lily would now make for nearby Hawaii rather than San Francisco. We would make port in Honolulu in 5 days, and would have to find our own further conveyance from there. Excuse me. Got the hiccups again. Honolulu sounded wonderful to me. Monsieur Fogg's lips pressed ever so slightly together. A rare outward sign of entirely understandable annoyance. This, my master said, will not do. Indeed not, sir. I agreed, not even daring to calculate the delay and expense our unexpected diversion would cause. Monsieur Fogg gave me a cool, appraising glance. Captain Wicker has reneged upon his word as a gentleman, he said curtly, before lowering his voice to an almost furtive undertone. Our course is clear. We must mutiny. I opened my mouth to agree wholeheartedly, but he continued on without so much a pause. See to it, Passepartout. Use your natural charm, initiative, funds. Quite, he said, with the agreeableness of a gentleman who has just given his valet a near Herculean task. We will mutiny in 5 days when we reach Honolulu. Make your preparations as you see fit. Yeah, they should. That sucks to tell us. Police hunt card sharp known as the Reverend's daughter, last seen in Yokohama. That's pretty bad to tell everybody else that they have to make their way from Hawaii to back to San Francisco. My task was clear. I was to foment mutiny aboard the Water Lily. I decided to begin by exploiting the crew's animosity toward one another. Divide and conquer. So dear Maman always counseled. Maman, I don't know who that is. I considered inflaming the religious passions. Gossip and rumor would be a good way to start. Those passions were by nature unpredictable, so I decided to desecrate the Shinto shrine, steal the captain's wall-mounted crucifix, spread rumors, gossip about the captain, planning to forcibly convert all the Shinto crew when we reached port. Some of the younger members seemed alarmed, but others merely laughed off the possibility. It was with satisfaction that I noted a certain increase in tension aboard the Water Lily, a situation I would carefully have to exacerbate if my master's mutiny was to have any chance of success. Next, I attempted to ingratiate myself with Commander Davis and the submariners, the Chinese laborers, who were rather storm-tossed and disgruntled. There are no storms underwater, the commander muttered, her hair a tangle underneath her cap. We should have submerged. I offered her hairbrush, tried to buy her loyalty with 500 pounds. Captain Wicker risked all our lives. I think perhaps he does not trust your ability as submariners. Commander's face darkened at my assertion. Perhaps you are right at that, she said. Perhaps so. I took my leave. I was going to say I took my leave, giving my seed of doubt time to sprout in my absence. Commander Davis. Let's see here. Acapulco. Panama City. Sugar canes in Panama City. I know very little of the Pacific Islands, but good God, it's such a big. I mean, there's just nothing in the middle. There's Honolulu. That's it. It's so big. There's Hawaii in the middle. I had attempted to suborn the obvious targets aboard the Water Lily, but wars were often won by the unexpected. With that in mind, I turned my attention upon the valets and Batmen. Batman's on the ship! To the ship's officers. Being a gentleman's gentleman myself, I knew the value of a good servant. Conversely, I was also aware of the disruption a bad one could cause. I appealed to them with my considerable charisma and style, logic and reason, sense of duty. I make an impassioned, prettily worked speech. I dare say I managed to sham a few crystalline tears at the exactly right moment. It was almost laughably easy to draw them into my cause. The captain and his officers were not, it must be said, popular amongst their servants. Well, that was a waste. Well, it's no different than just hitting the other button. I spent the day putting the last finishing touches on my planned mutiny. It was a matter as delicate and serious as the creation of a souffle by a master chef. I spread word of my signal amongst my allies. Dinner retired, there was nothing more to be done. Ah, I didn't have time to hit the button. We reached Honolulu. In the dark. The captain took a small skiff into the harbor with a few of his officers, wishing to inquire about repairs before putting the Water Lily into dry dock. Monsieur Fogg watched the boat for a long moment. Now is the time, he said crisply. I trust everything is in order. I assured him it was. And he nodded, having expected no other response. Let us hope so. With that, my master retreated to his cabin. I called the signal to arms. The Water Lily erupted into chaos. Everywhere was the clash of sabers and pistols. Now and then I heard the shriek of officers' sonic weapons. But I was not alone. Half of the crew that followed the Shinto creed fell in behind me, lit with the desire to teach their Christian crewmates a lesson rather than mutiny. But their anger helped stoke the fires of rebellion. The loyal officers found themselves inexplicably delayed and thwarted in their efforts to dress and arm to meet the mutiny. The valets and Batmen had thrown their loyalty behind my uprising and bought us precious time to establish our control over the ship. The Chinese laborers rewarded my friendship with steadfast loyalty, throwing themselves into mutiny with all the desperation of men and women who utterly loathed sea travel and longed to revenge themselves upon their instrument of torment in any fashion. They lit fires and tore up the already ragged sails, causing some welcome chaos. The submariners, led by Commander Davis, emerged quietly. There was a long, terrible moment when I wondered at their allegiance. Then Commander Davis caught my eye and nodded. We know it. We know when it is time for a change, she shouted, driving back any stragglers loyal to Captain Wicker. I saw Mademoiselle Loretta trip up one of the loyal officers out of the corner of my eye. She tipped her bonnet in my direction, a gesture of respect from one player of the game to another. The whirl of the battle took me away, but not before I saw her falsify the magnificent feint and block the gangway to the navigation room. By noon, it was clear how the day would end. The mutineers raised a ragged cheer of victory. I myself had ended up with a debonair scratch upon the cheek, and had somehow come to be in possession of a brace of pistols and 3 sabers. By the time the captain and the officers returned, we had complete control of the ship. They were quickly trussed up and... let's go with thrown into the brig. By the time, let's see here, for safekeeping, Monsieur Fogg emerged, surveying the scene of recent battle with a calm eye. Well done, he said, with classic gentlemanly understatement. Still, it was well done. And more, if I do say so myself. So we're going to, where would we have gone? We would have gone to Acapulco. To my amazement, the successful mutineers held a vote and elected me the new captain of the Water Lily. I tried to refuse, to little avail. What did I, Passepartout, know about captaining a vessel such as this? Rest assured, mes amis, it was in great part a ceremonial title which made no particular demands on my seamanship. Monsieur Fogg, though pleased by the success of our mutinous endeavor, seemed to regard my elevation in rank with some wariness. I am, he admitted, as we prepared for bed, somewhat put in mind of Bonaparte. Parbleu! I guess that's pardon? Otherwise, the succession passed smoothly, and I acquired Wicker's top hat as a mark of office. Day 60. Monsieur Fogg murmured that night in his sleep, and still some distance yet to travel. It's not that hard to go across the, The new first mate, a cheerful girl by the name of Wang, came to me with an intriguing notion. As you know, the Water Lily is a ship-to-submarine prototype, she said. If the submariners cooperated, we can convert to submersible, and make port at San Francisco in 2 days rather than 5. I called in Commander Davis, the leader of the submariners. I can see why I'm here, but the answer is no, she declared. I may have aided you against the captain, but I do not trust you or your leadership. May I go? Surely you wish to use the submersible, I declared. I do, but who exactly are you to ask me? Forgive me, you are no captain, Captain. I could hardly argue with that. Huh. Seems weird. The mysterious French pirate sees a steamer off coast of Honolulu. How do we get the newspaper out here? In the middle of the water. We spent most of the day repairing the damage done to the ship by the mutiny. First Mate Wang took care of the particulars with an efficiency that I was loath to interfere with. Therefore, I spent my time at whist with Mademoiselle Loretta amongst the crew, who waxed lyrical about the grand adventure of our recent mutiny. I feel I have much to learn from you, Captain, she declared, batting her eyelashes in studied coyness. I happened upon First Mate Wang holding hands with Commander Davis at the rail of the boat. It was too late to trouble with the submersible. I wondered if I could change her mind. Holding hands. Let's see here. I wondered if I could change her mind and approach, but at the sight of me, both leapt to their feet. Captain, we were just getting to work, Wang said, and the two hurried off in separate directions. I guess because they're both females? Maybe? Greetings, mademoiselle. Passepartout. Why, hello. Let's see. Let's see here. Buyers in Freetown will pay a huge amount for buffalo hides in Port Royal. Now, anyway, I think I will marry a Frenchman. Really? Oh, anyone will do so long as they have the vowels. Geez, this is a long part of the journey. We were making good time to San Francisco, and we had repaired much of the damage to the Water Lily. I began to feel rather comfortable in my captaincy. I gave serious consideration to the seafaring life after my master and I had completed our around-the-world challenge. In the evening, I spoke to Wang about our onward journey. In the flush of command, I had all but forgotten my master. So that evening I spent time in his company. In companionable silence, of course, though he did pause to remark at one point that he rather liked the new hat that had come with my office. Did I get it in time? We arrived in San Francisco 20 days after leaving Yokohama. We had managed not to lose even a single day, despite the obstacles our seemingly simple steamer journey had thrown up. At my urging, First Mate Wang accepted the captaincy. Commander Davis assumed control of the ship. And bid us a sincerely tearful farewell as we disembarked. The cowboy boots could earn us well here. We need some way to get from New York to London. I want to go to New York. That's usually the best way, right? Arrives Friday. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. Don't understand how it's... Oh, it arrives on Friday. No. San Francisco seemed less a city and more a ravenous beast, bent on consumption of everything, even of itself. Within the ever-expanding city limits, enormous steam-powered drills and diggers flattened hills. The building works made it tricky to talk to anyone. Reformed neighborhoods and dumped the resulting rubble and stone into Mission Bay. Tell you what, San Francisco, from the outside, coming in, one of the most beautiful cities, skylines you'll ever see. And then if you take the one-way, I can't remember, I want to say it's down to Los Angeles. I can't remember which way out of the city. There's these hills, rolling hills by the water. It's absolutely gorgeous. In the city, one of the dirtiest, nastiest cities ever. But good food, good people. But other than that, yeah, the beautiful city. Headed towards Chinatown to eat. Oh, and they have such good Chinese food. You can have, what do they call it? Dim sum. Best dim sum I've ever had. It was a warren of crowded wooden and brick houses, temples, businesses, herbalists, laundries, and market stalls selling fruits and flowers. Brightly colored lanterns regarded the people with some interest. Was interested in conversation. I only wanted to eat. Decided to approach a young man with a queue ponytail, an older man in European clothes, who offered me a cup of green tea when I introduced myself. You are very well dressed. Thank you. I breathed in the herbal aroma and gulped the hot tea down quickly. That is most generous. He chuckled and smoothed his crisp shirt. Many of my friends, they say, Lynn, you talk to foreigners, you wear their clothes, and I say to them, I'm American now, and you are too. He pointed at a young man with his hair in queue. Look at him, with his old-fashioned hair. There is a law against it here, but he wears it like that, the fool. What a ridiculous law. But that is your tradition. Why is there a law against it? I asked. It hurts no one, surely. We must all let go of our old culture, Lynn counseled. We are American now, but you are Chinese American. Why did they make such a law? Lynn looked at me with the pity of a wise man for a patent fool. Because they want us to become like them, of course. He shrugged. The sooner the better. Huh. I've never heard this before. Market opens at 7 a.m. Departs at 5. So I should have time to go to the market. We were lucky to arrive in San Francisco just in time to catch the inaugural journey of the Transcontinental Express, which would take us to New York in 8 days, with only a handful of stops along the way. Converse. Greetings, Monsieur Durant. Good day, Mr. Begin conversation. Ask John Durant about Salt Lake City. Let's see. Cheyenne, Albuquerque, Omaha. Oh, I didn't read the polygamy. You mentioned trains. I've been told when to travel aboard the Canadian. Burlington. Oh, I do not. I thought I meant apologies. I do not know. Omaha to Chicago. Chicago to Burlington. Through Cheyenne, use the dominoes. What would I know? Only some buyers. Buyers will pay for hunting rifles from Ponta de la Grada. The first day aboard was enjoyable enough. American trains could clearly not compete with their European counterparts, but it was amusing to see them try. The posters proclaimed Pullman's Palace sleeping cars, but they were more like places to keep cattle, and while not palatial in the slightest, they were at least serviceable. We sipped cool beer as we rattled through a long stretch of desert in the shadow of tall mountains. I gazed out the window at the endless, lifeless expanse on the other side, wondering if humanity would ever occupy this great open space. It seemed unlikely. Converse? Is that what happens when I push converse? Our fellow passengers were a curious mix of gold and silver prospectors, homesteaders, farmers from all corners of the world, Mormons, missionaries, soldiers, and stiff-necked gentry of various sorts. I gave a young black woman with a deep red bonnet and an infectious laugh a wide smile, a nod of greeting, a wide smile. Her name was Diana. I am meeting my husband in Cheyenne, she told me. He did construction work in New York, but New York isn't safe anymore. We have enough money to move now. Why isn't it safe? I queried innocently, having only the broad strokes of American news and history. You did not hear of the draft riots in Europe? She asked wonderingly. New York has always had Confederate sympathies, and when the Union began drafting New Yorkers, they rioted. They killed and burned black homes. My husband has never felt safe since. But now we're moving to Cheyenne. She smiled, nearly glowing with happiness. Where else can one go but New York? I told her some tales of my adventures. New Orleans, she replied. You can take the paddle boat down the Mississippi from Burlington, she laughed. Though New Orleans is dangerous in its own way. We talked a little more, and the afternoon wore into evening, and we arrived into the station town of Ogden, close to Salt Lake City. Top hats could earn us well here. Gentleman Traveler, Smith & Wesson, viable in Washington. Windscarf, Dusty Road Set. All right. Our completed dusty road gear should protect against the dust and fumes and help us negotiate times of dirt road journeys. Salt Lake City to Omaha arrives Monday. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. Hotel. As I sit in the downstairs room of our hotel, looking out across the plains, secretly longing for a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, and enjoying the moment of silence. In this peaceful town, I was approached by a young lady with a wry smile. May I join you? By all means, I answered. She smiled and slid into the seat opposite. I heard you're a traveler. I heard that you're going around the world. That is correct. We are endeavoring to circumnavigate in 80 days. I told her, or less. Really, she grinned. And how many days have you taken so far? I told her, and she bit her lip. A whole 68 days of traveling, she replied. You must be tiring of it surely. Not at all, mademoiselle. The journey is invigorating, I exclaimed. She smiled with a smile. She sighed with a smile. I am glad to hear that, monsieur. I myself would love to travel, but I cannot leave the Salt Lake. What my family are doing here and what they are building, it is too important. It needs every hand and every heart to make it fly. But if all else were different, then why, I would hang onto your coattails like a shot, monsieur, and ask you to show me the shores of Europe. When you are old, such a trip will be a matter of a short holiday. Then you should come. I assured her, in 50 years' time, a journey like mine will seem quaint. She sighed. I'm already too old for fairy stories, she replied, but perhaps you will be proved right. Perhaps one day people like me will travel all over the world spreading our good word. The evening was wearing on. The young lady rose and bid me farewell and bon voyage. I watched her go, feeling suddenly curiously old. In 100 years, I wondered, what would curious historians make of our adventures? Very little, I suppose. Where am I? Ah. We boarded the Transcontinental Express at Salt Lake City for the long journey eastward across the continent. Today, a fellow with a painfully trimmed moustache, and impeccable suit approached me outside the laboratory. I nodded at him companionably. I made way so he could pass by. And his thin lips parted in a contained grin. I am Felix Granger, he said. You are a puzzle. I was flattered. I was utterly flummoxed. Monsieur moi? Humble Passepartout? I am no more a puzzle than the sun's rise in the east. Truly, I am the simplest of men. Oh, well, it's only if you argue about how the sun rises and sets, I guess, those flat earthers. Oh no, do tell me how you came to be on the Transcontinental. Thereby hangs a tale I can tell, good sir. It seemed a probing question. He was merely interested in me and my adventures, and I saw no reason not to enlighten him in great and florid detail. His eyebrows raised higher and higher during my recitation. Then he said unsurely, This is your first time in America? Oh yes, I grinned. A very strange place. Will you allow, monsieur? He seemed surprised. Are we so strange? He stroked his trim mustache. Maybe we are at that, by God. Relations with Fogg has strengthened. I don't know how that strengthened our relations. Monsieur Durant? Not at all. He is one of the richest men in America. Obtain tobacco in Omaha. Sell at a profit in Atlanta. We stopped in Cheyenne, Wyoming for a few hours in the evening. The trim-moustached fellow disembarked to talk with a 6-foot-tall woman who wore the latest slim train skirts and a pistol tucked into her waistband. We disembarked also and bid farewell to our fellow passengers. Why? Just stay on the train. Our arrival in Cheyenne, Magic City of the Plains, was met to our surprise by a small parade, which we rather enjoyed, which quickly transpired not to be for us, but did not investigate too deeply, preferring to find onward travel as soon as possible. The town was otherwise rather small and uncomfortable, though I found myself in a charming saloon and ill supplied with decent tea. Playing a curious card game involving colored sets and runs which I rather failed to understand, but which the locals took terribly seriously, called poker. It appeared to be a game about having as little fun as possible, lying, bluffing, and eliciting sympathy, or else encouraging the other players to drink more heavily than oneself. Naturally, I was something of a dab hand, and won a decent sum before retiring from the game. Can leave the same day. Seemed there were no more trains heading east from Cheyenne for some time, so we were forced to hire an open carriage to carry us as far as Omaha. The ride was somewhat more uncomfortable than a railway. I was unconcerned, feeling we had ample time remaining, and could afford a few slower routes, though my master was not quite so certain and made hourly checks of his pocket watch. We have 10 days, basically. We had the carriage to ourselves, but of course my master did little to assist with the passage of time, so I was forced to sing a few songs of my childhood, beginning with Frère Jacques, and Les Bon Roy Dagobert, before breaking into a round of Alouette, before catching my master's eye and showing some mercy. He breathed a visible sigh of relief as I fell quiet. The carriage rolled on, and we did not speak to each other. Phileas Fogg now in debt, says bank. What? On the second day, something unprecedented occurred. Passepartout, my master declared. I believe I must apologize. Apologize, monsieur? I demanded, truly shocked. No, master, it is I who must apologize. Whatever for? You may act as you wish. There is something about this landscape that is most upsetting. I believe it to be the scale. I theorize no civilized man can live in America without losing some of his essential humanity. The open skies and distant horizons are simply too much to bear. Do not concern yourself, Monsieur Fogg. We will soon be in the city. I reassured him. There will be walls and streets. It may yet pass that America has cities, Monsieur Fogg replied, but at present I fear there are largely plots of land that offer little civic comfort. Perhaps New York will be more acceptable. Monsieur Fogg said nothing more on the matter, and the carriage carried onwards across the ever-widening open plains of the Americas towards the tiny settlement of Omaha. The safety harness could be sold handsomely here. Part of the Urban Traveler set. We passed an anxious night with our 80 days deadline looming. Every sunset seemed to carry extra weight. But before turning in for the night, I starched collar and shirts, engaged our guests in conversation to learn what I could, learning that some buyers will pay well for hunting rifles from New York. A most interesting snippet. Go to Chicago. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. At 5 p.m. Embark. It was with some trepidation that we boarded yet another caliche out of Omaha after our disagreements on the previous leg of the journey. I'm sure Chicago there will be trains. I was determined to be an excellent valet for this leg. I told my master, hoping to reassure him. Passepartout, my master declared, I do not believe my shirts are correctly folded. I have been collecting dust in my cuffs. Kindly attend to it. Monsieur, but here. Of course, Monsieur. I answered, very good. Monsieur, Fogg replied, then returned to his newspaper. He was, to his credit, at least not about to oversee my work. Oh, I want to talk to somebody else. I must credit my master. His reassertion of our position on the day before had mended our relationship well. After all, if I was not to be his valet, then what was I doing on the trip? Suppose I'm a natural servant in some ways. Silently, I thanked him for it. And while we traveled through parts of the world such as these, wholly lacking in civilization, it was imperative we brought civilization with us. San Francisco Chinatown riots. Our carriage kept up its pace, taking us across increasingly boggy land until we began to pass wooden houses scattered about seemingly at random. These were the outskirts of the city of Chicago. We were both relieved to see it. I think we had passed through the wilderness together and come out on the other side, once more master and man. The wax cylinder should do well here. I don't want to go to Atlanta if I can help it. Walking the streets of Chicago, it quickly became apparent this was a city in a state of some flux and in every way unimaginable. A wide variance of its diverse populace, the strong winds blowing down the wide streets, the sheer quantity of train lines coming into the city from all directions, to the arrangements of the city blocks for themselves, for the blocks I discovered were in motion. Walking the busy streets, I was forced to stop more than once to make way for a family home set on rollers, making its way rapidly down the street towards me, moving like a strange, gigantic snail. Nowadays, if you like Chicago, Dallas, and Atlanta, if you want to travel without having a bunch of layovers and all that, those are the three best cities to live in. If you want to travel from one side of the country to the other, or anywhere in the country easily. Let's see here. Making its way rapidly down the street towards me, quite oblivious to traffic signals and the carts and people in the road, while its occupants calmly ate their dinner at the window as they went. A sign propped up in the veranda read, J.S. McIntyre, Esquire, House of Movers. A man on the sidewalk beside me cursed under his breath. The fright drove me from the streets to the lake. I turned about sharpish. They act like they own the road, he muttered. Surely it is hard for them to stop. I was still blinking at the sight. Are you suggesting this is a common occurrence? I hurried back to my master. I demanded, staring away as the building took a left turn across busy traffic. It is the seventh one of these I've dodged today, the man grumbled. They're supposed to go to Van Buren and thereabouts, but instead they cruise around those Hickory Springs like so many lords and ladies. But why? I demanded. Where I come from, the houses stay where they are placed. I gulped. But do they ever strike people? 'Twas because the mayor wanted the city to be made of stone, so they fitted rollers under the wooden houses to move them out of the way. But you can't just move city folk around like cattle. They got the taste for it. See? People enjoy sunrise on the lake, sure. Then they go browsing the shops. Then they go out of the city for the night, all from their living rooms. I myself have traveled too much. I remarked I don't enjoy staying put. Well, maybe you would. You haven't seen what it's like out of the center. It's a swamp out there. Never should have built a city here at all, if you ask me, but no one did, of course. With that, he slumped away across the road. I returned to Monsieur Fogg, our hotel sometime later, only to find that the city was not tired of toying with me yet. The establishment, which had been normally positioned when I left, now required a ladder to enter, having been raised several feet into the air by a team of men with hefty jack-screws. I gawped. More great municipal works, they were clearly operating outside the law. As the owner of the building stuck his head out of the window to shake his fist at the work crew, one of them saw my attention and poked me hard in the chest. You've just run into Chicago's most notorious work gang, he declared. We run this town. You must let me inside. Are you going to move the building? I asked. Nope. We're going to jack it up another 6 inches for every 10 minutes this miser here doesn't pay his rent. The last words were directed upwards to the open window and then turned back to me. And if you want to go inside, $5. I gave the man £3, gently pressed the man to one side, moved away to look for a new way into the building. Without much of a thought, leaving him a little puzzled as to how best to have the money changed, since the bank had recently disappeared down Main Street in the direction of the lake. Embark to Atlanta. I gotta go to Atlanta, huh? Let's sell our wax cylinders. False passport. Electric wallet. Plastic wallet. Depart. No! Dang it. Dang it. Maybe I'll find a way to New York. That was it? This is not good. We took a room and settled in. I went to stretch my legs and entered into discussion with a charming Chinese ragamuffin who was looking for a child, whom I found near a clockmaker's. The ragamuffin thanked me, and as we talked, remarked that some buyers will pay well for tobacco from Ottawa. I said something similar once, but still look where I am. Oh my gosh, no. Come on, stop it. Maybe Ottawa. There's no way. Winnipeg. I'm not gonna make it. I'm going backwards. Now I'm mad. Because I missed the train to Atlanta. I could have made it if I hadn't sold those things. I encountered a Czech construction worker from Chicago, whom I fell into conversation, to find he was working on building the world's very first skyscraper in Chicago, 10 stories high with a frame of structural steel and completely fireproof, he boasted. Is it safe to build so high? It sounds more like a train than a building. Is fire such a hazard? I remarked, indicating the compartment all around us. Why should our trains be more modern than our houses and office buildings, eh? He rubbed his jaw. It's a good time to be in construction, I can tell you that much. I smiled at his enthusiasm, pleased to have met a man who made history with his own 2 hands. Yes, I'm a little mad right now. It's just backtracking. There was some standing about to be done as the line changed from its southern reaches to the northern stretch. It occurred in the town of Duluth, the far western point of an enormous lake, which I gazed out across as we waited. Surely a boat across such an expanse would take us halfway to London. Can we not sail? I asked my master. Ice, he replied. He shook his head. Ice, he replied, and would say no more about it. We boarded swiftly and continued our journey in relative comfort. At luncheon, a blousy, blonde-haired doctor took several of the passengers to task for failing to wash their hands before taking their meal. Matters of hygiene are absolutely vital. I added my voice to hers. I meekly washed my own hands. And who are you to lecture so? I meekly washed my own hands before settling to eat, not wanting to raise her ire. She cast me a quick, approving look and introduced herself as Dr. Lydia Berglund, from the Chicago Board of Public Health. Any naysayers quickly fell into line at that pronouncement, and the normal proceedings of luncheon gradually recommenced. Dr. Berglund proved, rather surprisingly, an amiable enough conversationalist. To tell you the truth, Passepartout, she confided, what I really do for the Board of Public Health is design parks. Very amusing, Doctor. I grinned. Parks are the lungs of the city. Dr. Berglund's eyes shone with the intensity of a zealot. That is why my mentor, the great Dr. Roche, says, we are building parks all across the city with toilets and sanitation, closing down cemeteries full of festering corpses, and making them places of health and greenery and community. Very admirable indeed, I remarked, which rather encouraged her to tell me about the latest park to be renovated in somewhat microscopic detail. Still, Monsieur Fogg was quite impressed. An afternoon spent with a passionate woman. I came away with a heavy respect for a public park. When I relayed the conversation to him, or perhaps he was suppressing a yawn, I find it quite impossible to tell. There's no way we're going to make it. Tomorrow at noon. Maybe. We're going to go to New York now. Oh, I never sold my rifle. Dang it. Possible tomorrow at noon. Okay, this might not have been the worst thing. It all began when my master and I turned to a street corner in Winnipeg and found ourselves directly in the path of a galloping horse with no rider to control it. I flung myself back around the corner, pushed Monsieur Fogg out of the way, prepared to grab the reins as it passed, throwing myself on top of him just in time to avoid the clatter of iron-shod hooves. I pulled myself to my feet, and we dusted ourselves off. Admirable reflexes, Passepartout, he remarked. I flushed. But we were not done yet. Moments later, the ground began to shake, and a cloud of dust and clatter of hooves resolved into a posse of red-coated mounted police. Beg your pardon, gentlemen, the fellow in the lead tipped his hat to us, a twinkle in his clear blue eyes. You haven't by chance seen a runaway horse go past? That is no horse, but a beast from hell. I shot back caustically. I pointed in a vague direction. Surely you can follow the trail of bodies. The red-coated mountie looked up at me and down, looked me up and down before leaning over in his saddle and offered me in his hand. Staff Sergeant James McLeod. McLeod. I like McLeod better. At your service. And you are, Passepartout, going around the world? Thoroughly charmed, monsieur. I gave him my most dazzling smile. Staff Sergeant. He coughed, hiding a smile behind his hand. I'm sure you are. I told him we had planned to make our way to America across the Atlantic, to London by any means to hand. Well, here's some local knowledge for you, he offered. There's a little-known airship hangar at... Ooh, might be worth heading in that direction. We parted ways soon after, and Staff Sergeant had a horse to chase after. And as always, my master and I had a journey to plan. Ivujik. Where is this Ivujik? Which way? Tomorrow at noon? It's not telling me. Oh, I gotta go up there first. Nope, we're gonna stick to our plan. Tomorrow at noon. Let's go. Our room was decent enough, but I was sure I would not sleep. Day 77, with the last few hours of the evening. I helped the kitchen staff to clean. Earning 95 pounds, as well as overhearing from him that the only market in Reykjavik had gone bankrupt. Most intriguing. It was day 77. We had barely 100 hours remaining to return home. The conductor, I feel like if I should just push the buttons faster, like it'll get me there faster. The conductor, a dark-haired First Nations woman, eyed me dubiously. First time on the Canadian Pacific Railway, she asked. Is it so obvious? Indeed it is. She refrained from rolling her eyes. The line runs from Gastown all the way to Ottawa, though you have to change at Winnipeg. It's the first transcontinental railway in the Dominion of Canada. She paused, fixing me with a look. I felt some kind of response was expected of me. We are going around the world. So this line will be most advantageous to us. She was nonplussed. The railway isn't owned by the government or a private company, but by the Blackfoot Confederacy. This here is First Nations territory, so no smoking, no liquor, and no firearms, you hear? Yes, madam, I nodded. No liquor? The entire railway belongs to Blackfeet? I nodded, not wanting to find myself on this formidable woman's bad side. Indeed, she quite reminded me of my own dear maman. Oh, that's mother, I think. The steam whistle sounded twice, and I hurried back to Monsieur Fogg as we pulled out of the station. Monsieur Fleet, good day there. Bears. I want to go to New York, from New York to London. I should be able to go straight to London. It was a crisp morning as we left Winnipeg. I could almost taste the snow in the air, though the heat of the steam boiling out from the engines kept all of us passengers warm as we headed toward Ottawa. I found myself heading toward the engine room at the front of the train in the afternoon. The heat and churn of machinery seemed to call to me. Artificers checked the gauges and shouted instructions. The men wore deerskin leggings, little else but sweat, and the thin undercoated shirts were the women's only concession to modesty. It looked like a sweat-slick vision of hell. I watched as patterns emerged. I tried to brush the coal dust from my lapel. The seeming chaos. I watched as patterns emerged amidst the seeming chaos. Smaller, slighter figures ran cold between the stores and the shovelers. Artificers and assistants splashed signs at each other through the smoky gloom. Each man and woman operated as a cog in the well-oiled machine of the engine room. One of the coal shovelers pushed her goggles up and cocked an eyebrow. "You want something, sir?" Where may a man acquire a pair of deerskin leggings? Only the pleasure of your name, mademoiselle. Just saying hello. I sketched a bow, the charming effect only slightly ruined by a cold, dusty cough. She gave me a coal-stained grin and up-and-down look. It's Harrit, city boy, she said, turning back to her duties. Now run along before you get coal dust all over your pretty clothes. Her fellow shovelers hooted and catcalled, and I found a flush traveling unaccountably up my neck. Luckily, I was saved by the sound of the steam whistling, announcing that we were approaching our destination. I mumbled my excuses and hurried back to Monsieur Fogg. Ottawa was in our sights. Quebec City or New York? We're not going to go to New York. Alright, let's embark. We set out for Quebec in the back of Bazette car driven to Mi'kmaq traders. Alas, they spoke only little French, and I spoke no Algonquin whatsoever, so we were reduced to broad statements and elegant charades, traveling mostly in silence. Nothing that would require negotiation. Mystery rocket seen over Herat. Celebration or threat? One of the traders offered me a ball of some strange substance from a rawhide bag and mimed eating it. I looked at the offer dubiously. I stilled myself to try a bite. Pemmican, the trader said, giving me a name for the gustery experience. He watched my face as I chewed it. Tasted of meat and fat, buffalo or elk by my reckoning, cut with the sweetness of chokeberries. It was not at all bad. I spat it up over the side of the car. I tried to keep a straight face as I chewed. Dried fruit and meat all boiled down and pounded. Indeed, I felt quite energized, especially after convincing Monsieur Fogg to also try some. The strange foodstuff was clearly well designed for keeping out the cold. Several processions will fetch a few pounds here. Pass the night. Unlike Paris, which was bisected by the Seine, Quebec sprawled over the north bank of the St. Lawrence River. Ah, mes amis, there is something about a city and a river that fills me with yearning. And hearing French, even a strange, lilting sort of French, spoken all about me, did not help the least. We toured the Chateau Frontenac, we visited the Citadel. I had little interest in the city. Pacific Railway, it was built over the old chateau. Pretty sight. Monsieur Fogg insisted I take a cup of tea with him, though I had barely placed the cup to my lips when he snapped open his ledger. Very good. Passepartout east. Oh, I have to explore. I don't get it. Yes, I have to explore. Does this go straight to London? Please go straight to London. It does not. We did not make it. We did not make it. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. At 6 p.m. Embark. Hire extra space. Go. I should have taken the other guy's advice. Found passage out of Quebec, destined to travel as far as Reykjavik. It was excellent news, likely to give our journey quite a well-earned boost. We hopped quickly aboard. Renowned Brit Sir Francis claims collie cult brainwashed British. That sucks. The Amarook was crewed by a family of dark-eyed, broad-shouldered Inuit boys who took turns captaining the sturdy little hot air balloon. Today's captain was Natar Unark, the oldest of the boys, if one can judge by height and breadth, but I was more concerned that the role of navigator fell to Olaok, the youngest. He was a gainly youth. He had a vague air about him. The other boys did not seem worried, so I tried to keep my doubts to myself. Perhaps his youthful appearance was deceptive, and he was a seasoned navigator. Never worry, friend, he nudged me in the ribs. I'm old enough to read a map. Just hold on tight and we'll be in Reykjavik before you've digested that seal stew from dinner. I clapped him on the shoulder and laughed. That's the spirit, mon ami, I said encouragingly, taking heart from his confidence. I have faith in your, no doubt, formidable abilities. Day 80. Rolling Chicago funeral home claims another victim. Day 80, Passepartout. We drifted across an endless ice-blue sea and wondered how anyone had ever dared to follow these winds before airships had existed to carry them home once more. This part of the world was as barren as any desert. People clearly could survive anything. Even Passepartout was surviving this long journey after 80 long days. As we lay down to sleep, Monsieur Fogg murmured, "Today is day 80, Passepartout. We have failed. Do not lose heart," I advised him. "Indeed not," he agreed. "We must still return home, and as fast as possible." I can't go straight to London? My confidence on Oliak's abilities were well-founded, for at dawn we sailed over the very tip of Greenland, right on schedule. I looked out over the frozen landscape, trying to imagine what sort of people made their living in such an inhospitable place. A meal and a cramped game of whist in our cabin. Later we heard the captain sound the call. Reykjavik was in our sights, the cities rising up over the bright blue sweep of the bay. We have to explore Reykjavik to find an onward journey. There it is. I'm 2 days behind, 3 days. Reykjavik was quite a town with a few. Reykjavik was a quiet town with few inhabitants, but still had the feeling of a bustling center of commerce. The flag of the Kingdom of Denmark fluttered above the trade hall, declaring this place an outpost, but all of the outpost colonies and adjuncts of great nations we had seen, it seemed the most comfortable in its skin. Still, there was always dissent. This comfort most likely derived from the natural hot springs, which we tried out in an open area behind a fine fish restaurant. Monsieur Fogg sat at one end and myself on the other, and we breathed in gulps of steam with a deep, satisfying sigh. They should fit these in Hyde Park. This has been a long and wearisome adventure, I exclaimed. Monsieur Fogg shook his head. I think they're heated from underground thermals, he replied. In London they would require coal, but in London there are better uses. I do believe it was the first time I heard him say, even in a roundabout fashion, that any place had its own elements of value. Tomorrow at 8 a.m. It was with heavy heart that I watched the sun go down. 80 days had come and gone, and here we were, still marking time, and not yet home. As night fell, I buffed and shone my master's pocket watch, went out to explore a little, and fell into discussion with a nervous Turkish clerk who was searching for a dog, which I found hiding behind a heap of cloth near a dog kennel. The clerk thanked me, and as we talked, remarked that the weather in London had been poor. I asked him how he knew. I assured him, but only winked and bid me good luck on my travels. The Silver Seal was a Gaiac imported from the Ottoman Empire. We loaded up. How long will it take? I asked the captain as we boarded. 3 days, he replied. Can't be done any faster. 3 days seemed like a very long time, and I could see from Monsieur Fogg's expression that he thought that much as well. The ocean tore along beneath us. I enjoyed talking to no one. There was nothing I needed to know, no one to charm, flatter, or beguile into giving us aid. There was only the wind and the time, and we could control neither. Monsieur Fogg looked out of the observation deck windows with perfect calm. Though the wager was lost, he was no doubt ruined. I watched him closely for fear he might do something drastic. I spent the remaining time embarking on the writing of this account, watching every possible danger. Though I found already the details of our early adventures had grown vague and indistinct. We tethered at the airship dock in Hyde Park and felt for the first time in 84 days the feel of English soil under our shoes. At long last, we had returned to London, 4 days late. Not too shabby, though, for our first time. I hailed one of the steam carriages idling on the banks of the Serpentine in Hyde Park. "To the nearest pub, to the Reform Club," I instructed, and my master shook his head. "To Savile Row," he corrected calmly, and turned his face to the window. "I have most assuredly lost my wager." Soot and fog thickened the yellow light in the gas lamps as we drove through the streets of London. I searched for some words to comfort my master. Think I only grasped the truth of the matter then. We had lost the wager, and by only a handful of days. One fewer delay, one speedier journey, and we might well have returned to London in glorious triumph rather than ignominy. My master had entered his domicile with his habitual tranquility, though he instructed me to leave the windows shut up, so that his neighbors would not mark his return. I prepared his supper, and he ate heartily, as if he were not utterly ruined. "Passepartout," he began. "Yes, Monsieur Fogg?" In the silence that followed, I counted up the vast sums expended, the hair's breadth escapes, all the obstacles which we had overcome and those which had delayed us. "You have performed your duties with competence and skill, Passepartout," he said, as though remarking upon the weather. "But more importantly, you have circumnavigated the globe as my companion. Despite the unfortunate protraction of our journey," he added, "it was no small feat." "And what will you do now, monsieur?" I asked, trying to emulate my master's coolness and aplomb. I have no idea what aplomb means. A-P-L-O-M-B. Self-confidence or assurance, especially when in a demanding situation. "My course, Passepartout," Monsieur Fogg interjected smoothly, "is fully decided upon us. We must attempt the journey around the world once more." "Together?" I cried. "Indeed," Monsieur Fogg said implacably, an intent light glinting in his cold blue eyes. "But this time, forewarned and better prepared, we will succeed." "Yes, monsieur," I nodded smartly, glad I was not bothered to unpack our cases. Monsieur Fogg consulted his ledger, tapped his pen. "Perhaps this time," he said thoughtfully, "a more direct route. Your journey round the world is complete." Adventurer Phileas Fogg loses wager. Fogg blames Rakjavak diversion, Indian rebels destroying train line in Chittagong, and captured by Cali cultists for 84-day journey. Very cool. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed that. I hate that we missed it. But I'm thinking play again. That's what I'm thinking. So as always, give it a big thumbs up, subscribe, and we will see y'all in the next one. Remember, kiddos, to keep moving forward!